Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host. And we're back with another innovator interview. And we're talking with Steve Melink, who's the founder and CEO of Melink Corporation. Obviously, he started the company. It is a kitchen ventilation and HVAC company, installation company, that has expanded radically into solar panels and geothermal heating and cooling, as well as other sustainable forms of building environment management. And he just authored a book called Fusion-Capitalism. It's a clean energy vision for conservatives. And we wanted to get him on and talk about where the conservative thinking is going in terms of climate change. I want to say before we begin that this is being recorded a few days before the presidential election. So we don't know the outcome. However, we'll be talking about some of the implications of the election as we go through the conversation. Steve, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Hello, Mitch. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I enjoyed your book. Now, why did you decide to write Fusion Capitalism? It's clearly aimed at conservative rethinking of how important it is to address climate change. And I've noted with interest that in recent surveys, younger Republicans actually poll slightly higher than younger Democrats of the same age in terms of their sense of the urgency of climate change as a major issue. How is conservatism changing and adapting to what is becoming increasingly clear there's a climate issue?
Well, good question. We might be seeing this change among younger Republicans, but I don't yet see it for those who hold power in political offices in D.C. and across our state capitals. There is still a resistance to recognizing the science, the data, the evidence of climate change, and it's been born largely from the influence that has come from the fossil fuel industry in trying to deny the realities of climate change. And so I'm heartened that younger Republicans are coming around, but they're not yet the ones holding the power. And they need to exert upward pressure. But I wrote this book because I'm a conservative, and I just don't believe that our brand should be about denying science and data. I'm an engineer, and I live and die by science and data. And it's crystal clear to me that this problem is happening, and shame on us as a party for denying the reality of it.
Well, so let's talk about fusion capitalism. Why fusion? Because your book doesn't revolve around nuclear, but it does, of course, build on an essential nuclear reaction in the solar system.
Yeah, I mean, fusion is the nuclear reaction of the sun from which we get all the energy, heat, and light that we need to power our world many times over. And so, we need to stop the burning of fossil fuels and learn to live off the wonders of the greatest source of energy that exists in our solar system, the power of the sun. And the technologies are there that allow us to do that, and we just need to move in that direction. Solar and wind power, as well as battery storage and electric car technologies are here today. We don't have to wait 10 years or whatever to move to this clean economy of the future. It's time to do this today.
Now, clearly, you feel capitalism is the solution to this problem, and we've seen consumer adoption of all these technologies really starting to ramp up, particularly during the pandemic. Why capitalism? Is capitalism currently configured in such a way that it can make this transition?
Yeah, I think capitalism got us into this problem, but it is the best economic system we have in the world to get us out of the problem. And that is because we need scale and speed to bring these new technologies to market as quickly as possible. Socialism isn't going to allow us to do that. Communism isn't going to allow us to do that, although China is a communistic country, and they are right now leading the world in these technologies. And so, there's the threat that we're going to lose this greatest race of the 21st century if America doesn't, get on this bandwagon and start leading again, like we have so many times in our past in the 20th century, whether it be in the flight age, the space age, the computer age, the internet age. We've got to get our mojo back.
Well, now let's talk about your background and how you came to this realization about the environment and the importance of solar power. Early in the life of your company, you developed an exhaust technology that managed heat exchange, and it clearly got you thinking about how to create balance in systems. How did that change your thinking, both about the role of a company and the way you led the company?
Well, I was in the business of energy efficiency, but I wasn't really walking the talk. I was a businessman trying to make a living and creating a better future for me and my family. And it wasn't until 2004 that I attended a green building conference in Cleveland, and I was truly inspired by the thinking that so many architects, engineers, construction people wanting to change the building industry to make it more sustainable. And it resonated with me so, to the core that I came away from that thinking, okay, well, our company's growing. Let's walk the talk and build a LEED Gold certified building. LEED is a green building rating system, and gold, there was no other gold building in Ohio, and I wanted to be the first. So I just wanted to, start to walk the talk and be more authentic in what I was doing. And then that just put us on a whole new path. Lo and behold, people from all over wanted to tour this building. That just further whetted our appetite. And, we made our building a LEED Platinum certified. Then we went to net zero energy. Mm-hmm. And then we went to, we had all of our technicians drive hybrid cars. Now we're into electric. We've got a second net zero energy building. So, it started off in kind of an innocent, unintended way, but it has manifested itself in a way that, in hindsight, it was meant to be. So now we see ourselves as a leader and trying to educate and inspire other leaders around the country and the world.
Now, this is a really fascinating merging of purpose and success on your part, because your company has done very well, and it is inspiring to see the pictures and read the story about your net zero efforts. But weren't you concerned about maintaining shareholder value? And for instance, there's a founding document in the modern conservatism, the theory of the firm, that argues that everything is about shareholder value, creating a higher stock price. Wasn't what you were doing a distraction from the purpose that your company had?
Well, I was the sole shareholder at the time, and so I could make these decisions for myself. And while initially, yes, I wanted to maximize shareholder value, as I got older, other things became more important to me. And like I said, when I attended that conference, I was inspired and came to believe that, sustainability is important. Leaving our children and future generations, a safe and healthy world becomes more important. You become a parent and you start thinking about these things. And so, I fully subscribe to the 3 Ps of not only profit, but people and planet, that we need to be more holistic in our thinking as business leaders.
Well, you mentioned the Republican brand earlier. Why is the brand of embracing responsibility for environmental impact important to a company today? What would you tell another CEO who was on the fence or had a lot of investors who were on the fence about the value of doing this?
Well, I'd first say that my company has become better and stronger for having become a leader in sustainability and promoting clean energy. Our our reputation, our brand is stronger. We're able to attract and retain better talent in our organization. We're therefore able to attract and retain better customers. The cascading benefits have far exceeded the energy savings of these various energy efficiency and renewable energy measures we've installed. So, these are strategic benefits and advantages. And ultimately, I would tell any CEO that your brand is the most important thing, and you don't want your brand to be seen as being part of the problem of societal problems. And there's just ever greater awareness of climate change being a problem. And are you going to be on the right side of history or on the wrong side?
Well, it's certainly not a good thing to be on the wrong side because, of course, you don't survive that. Now, one of the arguments that is made against environmental decisions is that it requires a lower standard of life, something not quite approaching what modern living is like today. How do you respond to that criticism when people offer it?
Gosh, a lower standard of living. I think there's, our world can only become safer and healthier and more prosperous by kicking our fossil fuel addiction and moving to cleaner energy sources where millions of jobs can be created, and we won't be pumping all these emissions into our atmosphere, which affects our, which causes respiratory and other diseases. By not creating demand for oil in the world marketplace, we won't be allowing our enemies, terrorists and dictators, to finance their agendas. And so, if we can drive the price of oil down to zero so they can't use this as a means to foment their evil deeds, that's only going to make the world safer. And so it's not going to be a world of less. It'll be a world of higher quality.
And that higher quality may be a different pace, too. But those are the kinds of modulations of life we've gone through all through history. But you also just kind of called out an important point, and that is that right now we subsidize the oil industry in a variety of ways. And in your book, you go through an analysis of various hidden subsidies for oil and fossil fuels. What kinds of things did you find, and what would you point to people to tell them to watch for?
Well, first, there's we're subsidizing because we're allowing them to pollute our environment for free, in effect. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not allowed to put my garbage into your lawn. If I did, I would probably be fined. And I think companies who are putting their garbage into our collective atmospheres should be fined as well. Similarly, our military is keeping the oil shipping lanes open so that oil can flow freely from the Middle East to all parts of the world. If our military wasn't doing that, there would potentially be all kinds of, problems in safeguarding that oil. Mm-hmm. So there's another example of how they're getting the oil industry is getting a free subsidy. The military is paying for it, and we are paying for the military as taxpayers. And then healthcare costs. Asthma and other respiratory diseases are chronic across America and the world, and often caused by the junk that we're throwing into the air that our children and elderly are breathing in. And that cost is not being passed along to the perpetrators of the source of the problem. So those are examples.
That's an interesting point. I mean, you're talking about full life cycle accounting, and we are so much more prepared to measure not everything, but a lot more than we did in the past. But one of the tenets of the older person who is conservative these days seems to be that we don't need to count things we didn't count before. How do you get them to start to pay attention to the fact that, for instance, we're subsidizing the creation of asthma all over the United States?
Well, I I'm not a psychologist. I think, for me, it maybe it wasn't so much the data, it was real life experience. Like, I've got a couple daughters who have asthma, and I can't convey the helpless feeling of one of my daughters, often coming to my wife and I at night saying that she couldn't breathe.
Yep.
That's a horrible feeling. And until you have experiences like that, someone who is steeped in old ways of accounting, may not be able to relate as much. So we just need to bring to life these stories and truths to, help them along.
I share that experience. My daughter has asthma, and it can be frightening, and you don't know you can't see what's causing it, but it is around it. You can see different types of pollution or things in the atmosphere are affecting her, and you want to know, but we have tended to look away as a society from a lot of the consequences of oil. Now, you also offer a renewable energy primer for your readers. What do you think the smartest clean energy investment a home or business owner could make today to make a difference?
Yeah, so, I will say that the solar panels are quickly going mainstream, and we see this more and more with utilities installing solar farms and wind farms. But solar is probably in a more practical solution for the average homeowner and even the average business owner. You can't always put a wind turbine in your yard or where your business is located, but solar panels have the potential to become ubiquitous. Every home and business and school can become a mini power plant and generate its own electricity. But even with that said, many people are going to say, well, I can't afford a $5,000 investment, like solar or whatever it might take. And this is my alternate solution, and that is to go to your utility and subscribe to their green power option, which most of them offer today.
Right.
And so, you may not be able to afford solar right now, but you can kind of create demand for your utility to, buy power from a wind farm or solar farm on your behalf. And, the initial cost of you doing that might, cause, a slight premium, but, that premium is so minimal that most of us can afford it. And I'm going to say that for the average homeowner, it would mean about the cost of a Starbucks coffee per month. So many of us are more than capable of affording that type of a cost to ensure that we're doing the right thing for our children and future generations. And in time, that cost will go down to zero. And in fact, it will go even become more cost effective as solar and wind is only going to continue to get lower and lower in cost, and other fossil fuel costs will only go up over time as we continue to use up limited natural resources. So, my message to all the listeners out there would be one of empowerment that, again, even though you may not be able to afford or be able to put solar on your home or business right now, at the least, do this today. Subscribe to the green power option and create more demand for green power across our country. And we can start a clean energy revolution that way.
Now, one of the things I noted, you referred to your own solar-powered home as being a small power company, and you said it feels like liberty. And I think this is really the crux of the conservative argument you're making, which is that even individual investments in home solar is a form of an entrepreneurial activity that liberates you from the way that you had to pay for your heat or cooling prior to the investment. Does that sound right? Is that the way we should be thinking about this? Is that each of us?
Yeah. Well, we've often talked ever since the energy crisis of the 70s that we want to become energy independent. And at that time, it was energy independent from the Middle East, for example, people holding oil over our heads in a way. And what you're just now speaking about is taking energy independence to a whole new level, to where not only are we not dependent on Middle East producers of oil, but we're not dependent necessarily even on coal-fired plants 50 miles away from our homes. That
Right.
Why not just take advantage of the sunshine that hits our homes and our land every day, and it comes to us for free. So yeah, there's a strong feeling of independence and being liberated from being dependent on foreign or far away places that are kind of controlling you to some degree right now.
Right. Well, and by making that investment, you localize things, whatever those things may be, power, food supply, other things. If you're bringing them back closer to you, you have greater control locally.
Right.
Now, let's pivot a little bit to talk more about the political problem. And there was a quote near the end of your book. Politics is rarely about seeking truth and almost always about opposing the other party. And I was struck by that because it seems to me, when we were young, that politics was a little bit more about compromise and discussion. And I'm wondering what advice you have for bridging the gap between the opposite sides of the renewable energy debate that's going on today.
Well, one way of bridging that gap is to say that I am a conservative, and I grew up in a conservative household, went to parochial schools, and never in that time was I told that it is proper to burn and pollute and do damage to our environment. In fact, it was just the opposite. Our ethic was don't litter, don't cause forest fires. Then smog became a problem. We were able to solve that by and large. Acid rain became a problem. We solved that. The ozone hole became a problem. We solved that. Often it was in Republican administrations that, led the charge against.
And did amazing things.
Yeah. So it really wasn't until 2000 when Al Gore and George Bush ran against each other, and Al Gore lost, and then he went on to become a spokesperson for the climate change problem, and that's when things got political. But I think most people who are under 20 years old just don't have that perspective that conservatives have long held the banner of being for the environment, and we shouldn't let politics get in the way. Recent politics get in the way of that proud tradition, and so that's one way of giving this longer-term perspective. And secondly, just raising awareness that guess what, conservatives, it's the greed of the fossil fuel industry that's been brainwashing so many of us over many years and even decades now. That this is akin to what the tobacco industry was doing, denying the science of cancer and addiction and all those kind of things. And we've seen it in many other industries as well. So, I would like to think that we're going to all rise up above, politics and greed and rally around the science and truth. And, ultimately we want our personal brands to be around doing the right thing. And I just don't think that the conservative brand can continue to hold on to this dying notion that climate change isn't real or that it's not caused by man.
So what would you describe as the planks in a conservative platform for America's clean energy future?
Well, number one, embrace the science and put into action a plan that would look something like this. We already see the coal industry, it's dying. Utilities are shutting down plants. Let's accelerate that, and let's plan to stop burning coal by the year 2025. In 5 years, we need to decommission all coal-fired plants. Next, by 2030, we should be well on our way to striving for 80% clean energy generated on the grid. That is a very bold goal, but I would kind of harken back to the 60s when we set the bold goal of going to the moon in under 10 years. So if we create this revolution, and it can be done easily, and because another step we need to do in this this plan is to put a price on carbon. If we did that, I think we could be well on our way to achieving 80% clean power on the grid by 2030. Now, maybe it needs, I think Biden's plan, if he becomes president, is to get there maybe even up to 100% by 2035 or 2040. But I'm about turning this into a true business revolution of the size that we experienced in the 70s and 80s with the computer revolution.
So should we make an investment in the infrastructure you were just talking about? Because the grid itself is configured to be hubbed and driven by very large organizations, but the flexible grid that we're talking about, where there are many edge generators, homes and businesses with solar panels, would you support a major investment in infrastructure upgrades, as for instance Eisenhower did with the highways?
Yeah, we need a smarter, more flexible grid, one that becomes more like what the internet is. There's no one central data center that can bring down the internet, and we need to be thinking in the same terms. I mean, right now, our power plants are vulnerable. I mean, whether to environmental disasters or to terrorist attacks. The way to make our grid more resilient is to make every building, if possible, its own little micro power plant, and immune from tornadoes and hurricanes in a way, and terrorist attacks. So that's the vision that we should be working toward.
So how does the Republican Party move past that deep relationship it has with oil companies? There was a massive investment in research and advocacy back in the 70s by conservatives, which has led to the place we are today, which is a rabid defense of the oil industry, amongst several things. So does it require a few solar billionaires to start to invest in the same sort of research and advocacy on behalf of environmental responsibility, or what's the magic?
That is slowly happening. I mean, you have people like Elon Musk, who I strongly associate with the clean energy economy of the future. I mean, he's totally disrupting the automobile industry, saying let's get away from gasoline powered cars to electric powered that can then be fed from clean energy sources. But also, I mean, job creation. I just recently read that there are more clean energy jobs in Texas, traditionally a red state, than there are fossil fuel jobs. Now,
and they pay 25 to 30% better.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, when you thought of Texas, you normally thought of oil, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and so right now that's the mecca of a lot of solar and wind farms. And then you look at a lot of the largest, most successful companies in the world, like the Apples, the Googles, Facebooks, Microsofts. They're investing heavily into clean energy. So, I think more and more investors are seeing this happening, and they're wanting to divest of fossil fuels. And, we see it in the news almost every day, where, coal and oil is hurting more and more, and clean energy is growing faster and faster.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us about fusion capitalism and what you have learned from your long journey. Please come back and let us know how it continues to evolve.
Well, thank you, Mitch, for having me, and good luck to yourself.
Thank you. And folks, that's Steve Melink, who is, Steve Melink, who is the founder and CEO of Melink Corporation, and also author of Fusion Capitalism, a clean energy vision for conservatives. We'll have a link in the article that accompanies this podcast, so you can find the book. It's a fascinating read, particularly for somebody who is not looking at this through the conservative lens, because it's surprising to see into this thinking. Folks, we'll be back with another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ears soon. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and take care of yourself, take care of one another, and take care of the planet.